Hello friends, my name is Marinez, and I recently read My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante with Max from Well Done Books. Max and I got to talking one day about different bookish ideas we had and different projects we would love to develop, and then we quickly realized that neither of us had the time or capacity, but we decided to buddy read a book and go from there. He suggested My Brilliant Friend. I had never heard anything about it, so we went with it, and I'm so glad that he ended up picking this one. My Brilliant Friend is the first in a series called the Neapolitan Novels, and it is adult literary fiction. Max and I tried to think of other adult series and we couldn't come up with any. It is just not something that you see often. This book is narrated by Elena, who is looking back on her life and friendship with Lila Cerullo. This book is set in Italy after World War II and were originally written in Italian and translated by Anne Goldstein. I will admit that when I started reading the story, I was hesitant and unconvinced. There wasn't anything exactly that I could pinpoint except for a feeling that the story was always on the verge of taking off. It felt like I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop, and that feeling of "are we there yet?" left me a little bit disenchanted through the first half of the book. I sent a message to Max and I asked him to take note of when the story kind of took off for him and that I would do the same, but I really couldn't be able to tell you when that happened. I was carrying and I was at the end before I even realized what was happening. I will also say that this story blooms in retrospect and in context of the rest of the series. I've read the second book, and just reading the second book paints this one in a different light. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. I think right now in my feelings it's a 5-star book, but I can't just disregard how difficult it was for me to really get invested into the characters. It does kind of amble along in the beginning. Later it looks like layers that she's putting down and you can appreciate them, but while you're reading it, it might take a while for you to get through this first book, and for that reason I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. That all said, this is a very gripping and haunting story, and I wanted to share with you 5 brilliant things about this book. Number 1, the setting and background don't overtake the story. It is post-World War II and it is in Italy, and I don't know a lot about that period and that place, but you get such a sense of what it means, of what the politics means for everybody's everyday lives, and just what it means to be a woman in that society, what it means to be a young person, a poor person, but she doesn't shove it down your throat. It's very much in the background, but it just infuses the story with the setting and the sense, and I absolutely loved it. Elena and Lila are from poor families, and they're growing up in a time when violence against women is a fine thing, and both of those things inform their stories, but it's not shouted at you. Number 2, the commentary that she has throughout the story. Just, there are 2 specific things that I really noticed and picked out and enjoyed, and one is this concept of there being a before, and how time works when you're a kid. There's this sense of there being things that happened before you, but nobody really talks about them or addresses them, and that was certainly true here, where nobody was talking about the war or what it meant or communist. Like, those were buzzwords that she heard, but nobody addressed this period of before. And I think as a kid, sometimes you do have that mentality that it's hard for you to accept that there was a life that your parents had before you got there. And then that kind of evolves into their own lives where they don't want to think about their own befores as they're moving on and growing up. The second thing that I really enjoyed was all of this commentary on bodies. Elena, as a narrator, has a really negative view towards bodies, and it's just brought up very casually. It's not anything that she ever addresses, like, I don't like bodies, but just the way that she describes people and she describes things, you can just see this negative tint on everybody's body. So it's very interesting to see where that goes and when it becomes positive. So just things like that she weaves into her story, again, very gracefully. It's not like she's coming out and yelling it at you, but I just really enjoyed picking them up. Number 3, and I just kind of said that this was a bad thing, and it is it was to a certain extent while I was trying to get into the book, but Ferrante can create this air of suspense, this any second now anything is going to happen, but it's funny because it's just so plot-like. It's these people's lives. Like, there's no, big villain coming out of anywhere, like nobody's, swooping down out of the sky, aliens don't arrive, nothing like that, but it's still that kind of suspense that pulls you throughout the story of somebody's everyday life. She creates this heightened sense of drama over what is a story about a town and a neighborhood and these two girls, and I just loved that by the end. In the beginning, yes, it was difficult because I was just kind of like, what's gonna happen? But by the end and throughout the second book, I just appreciated that. All of that is helped by number 4, and that is that Elena as a narrator has this air, and I think I've said air a couple times now, but she really has this air of unreliability. She is very critical of herself and is full of admiration and praise for Leela, and you start to think how much of that is reflected in the story that she's telling. Is she being fair to Leela, or is she pumping her up? Is she being fair to herself, or is she kind of pushing herself down? At the same time, Leela still comes off as a very complex and self-centered character, so I don't know how much of this is true in the sense that she's seeing it. I mean, obviously she's biased and she's the one telling us the story. So these ideas of you know, how Elena saw it compared to more objective truth, like how that works throughout the whole book. And it's very cool to think about as you go. It's not an unreliable narrator in a very typical sense. It's just you wonder about her own biases that she's bringing to the story. Number 5, this story is super accessible. You notice all of these things and they're clearly threads that Ferrante has left out there for you to pick up, but it still feels like she's serving up the story very gracefully and seamlessly. She's never pushing anything in your face. It was a great book to buddy read because as we're picking out all of these things and talking about themes, like, it lent itself very well to conversation. Even when I wasn't sure that I was liking it, I was getting it. And in general, it just feels very juicy, and especially going forward, it's very soap opera-y, but at the same time, she is just writing in this beautiful language and she will just throw some prose down. So you get both sides, the very drama-filled portion of the plot, but just the beautiful writing and the beautiful literary setup. Again, I just have to thank Max for picking this book and for buddy reading with me. You guys should be a little bit jealous because we had phenomenal buddy chats. It was just so much fun talking about this book. So if you're going to read it, I would absolutely recommend reading it with a friend. And I'm actually insisting that if you are inspired to read this, please send me emails with your thoughts. I could talk about this for days and days and days. I hope I inspired you to pick this up and give it a try. It is definitely something to be experienced. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon. I sent a message to Max.